Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Mumbai Angels Network Reboot, navigating the new normal session. Before we begin, I request all of you to please keep your devices on mute. This helps to hear the speakers from the front and present a seven-part series discussing key aspects of the issues currently impacting the startup ecosystem and how we collectively can take steps to overcome them. The session for today is divided into 45 minutes of panel discussion and 15 minutes of Q&A. Please feel free to send in your questions during the chat and we'll try to get it answered via a team panelist. If you wish to address a question to a specific panelist, please do mention that. Our session for today is on crisis sensitive marketing and maintaining brand relevance, where industry thought leaders will talk about the importance of appropriate content and messaging during the current crisis. Our panelists for today are Parveen Singhal, co-founder of Witty Feed. Parveen is the third co-founder of Stage and Witty Feed. He is in charge of creating content and devising marketing strategies for the company. Varun Duggirala, Chief Content Officer at The Glitch, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, one of India's leading new age creative agencies. Varun is the leading voice in modern advertising. Through his widely popular podcast, Advertising is Dead, Varun talks about the changes, developments, and disruptions in the business of advertising, media, and entertainment. Our third panelist for today, Neelima Burra, is the co-founder and board of director at Ganymede Business Ventures. Ganymede is set to become the world's largest quick service food chain, providing safe food on the street at affordable prices. Neelima is recognized as an industry thought leader, featured amongst A-list by Campaign India, and Best Martech Leader amongst 100 most influential marketing leaders. She is a global influencer in marketing and brand transformation, an avid speaker in various forums related to business, startup ecosystem, and marketing and strategic branding initiatives. The next panelist is Khushboo Sharma, CEO and founder at Zero Gravity Communication. Khushbu is a creative business strategist with the right mix of analytical and logical reasoning, customer empathy, and critical design thinking. She believes in a holistic, market driven approach to address complex business challenges, passion to solve these challenges with creative solutions using new media at her disposal. The session for today will be moderated by Ketaki Rituraj, Planning Director, Wunderman Thompson, and visiting faculty at MICA, IIM Indore, and IMT Ghaziabad. With an experience of over 11 years in the branding and communications industry, Ketaki brings a rich repository of experiences to the table. She is currently the as a visiting faculty at MICA, IIM Indore, and IMT Ghaziabad. On behalf of Mumbai Angels Network, I would like to thank our panel for their time and also for giving us and the audience the opportunity to hear their insights. A quick reminder to all participants to mute your devices and also to send in your questions via chat. And let's begin the session. Over to you, Ketki.
Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So, this is a session on crisis sensitive marketing and maintaining brand relevance. Now, interestingly, crisis as a phenomenon is not something new to marketing or branding. Brands and businesses go through crises with amazing regularity, actually, in this day and age, whether it is something as serious as the Uber sexual harassment, is chicken crisis in the UK, or closer to home, really, the crisis that we saw Maggie go through with the lead being found in its products. But crises of these nature are actually, so to say, easier to handle because businesses and brands can respond to them ceteris paribus, or all other things being equal. And today, however, we find ourselves in a position where things are not equal at all. In fact, they are absolutely all over the place. So with that, actually, the first thing that I'd like to ask the panel is, how is this crisis different from what we typically see in the world of marketing and branding? Varun, would you like to kick off the discussion?
Yeah, So, we've traditionally, when we talk about crises, or even if we talk about a large event, like let's say the recession, in 2008, it always leads to what is traditionally called a slowdown. Like a lot of things slow down, a lot of things are stuck, but there is still movement happening. What we have right now is almost a full stop, where we're having to really stay static and really figure way ahead on so many fronts. I mean, be it supply chain, be it manufacturing, be it how we do market right now. I think all plans have kind of been set aside, and we have to kind of reset from that point. So that's really how the situation is right now. I would not say it's unprecedented. I would say it have to go way back. Maybe when the last time there was a world war was the time when something like this would be even compared to. But I think what we have right now is almost a reset scenario going on,
Very interesting.
and we have to really figure the way ahead.
And thank you for not using the word unprecedented to describe this crisis,
It's
even
most
though you
overused
did
word.
use it in the sentence. Yes, exactly. On its way to becoming Oxford Dictionary's word of the year. But it is a bit of a reset. And in what ways do we think it is? Is it a reset? Khushboo, what do you think? How is this resetting brands and
So
businesses?
I think what Varun rightly said, normally in recession, there's a particular industry that gets impacted, and corresponding to that or spiral effect to that, industries are getting slow, but rest of the world goes on. Here, there is no country, there is no industry, there is no segment that's impacted. If you look at technology, then the companies to give them. If you look for advertising, there are no brands, so who will advertise? So it is also a fear of unknown that's creeping in people, where the uncertainty is taking away the ability of people to take risk, ability for people to kind of go out and talk, ability to go do any kind of spend, because suddenly the whole market and economic situation has kind of gotten a block. So I would take it more from a point of view, it's a fear of unknown that is creeping in for people to kind of take up on the wall.
And that actually leads me into the next step, the fear of the unknown. Now, that's something that's impacting not just businesses, but the consumers that are meant to buy the products and brands from these businesses as well. So how do you think this fear of the unknown has impacted customer behavior in the last month or so, or maybe even the last few months?
I think the biggest difference that has come is essential and non-essential. So anything that is essential, it's going to be impacted very, very, it's going on, it's fine. Only the supply chain is the issue. Any brand, any product, any consumer segment, when it is about non-essential, that's not top of anyone's mind. So luxury, lifestyle, fashion, all of that is going to kind of take us, setback, considering they are not the essentials that anyone is thinking about. So even the people or the brand owners in that segment are little apprehensive to wait and watch and not burn out. So the consumer behavior is all about what I need right now, and I'll just have. I wrote a couple of blogs, and the first thing is all of us are asking the choices that we make, the things that we consume, how much is essential, how much is not. So that's going to have a temporary effect on the consumption pattern and brands.
Absolutely. And going a little deeper into this, is this a short-term change that you see, or do you think this is going to impact customer behavior in the longer term? Neelima, would you like to weigh in on that?
I think what's important, how Khushboo is talking about, is actually also to do with more thinking of short term than long term right now. But how eventually it will unfold is looking at more long term. Because while you are thinking as bare minimum, what do you only need at a minimalist level? But what you're actually introspecting, planning, strategizing is plan ahead. I'm sure no one right now can plan for what will happen next month, but everyone is planning 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year horizon. Because whatever is the crisis, it is here to stay. While the lockdown will move away, but the impact will remain at least for 6 months and years. So long term and beyond 1 year. So being more long term, being more being looking at all the trends which you can gather from the current sensitivities, what you're reading every day on social media, your observation skills are put on test, what you understand, what your insights can be gathered on online, everything needs to be captured well to actually plan for the future. No backlog, no trend line of last 20 years going to help to plan the future ahead.
Yes. Yes, and I think that's the most interesting thing. There is no historical
Absolutely.
precedent that we can look at and use to learn for this crisis. It is, in fact, in that sense, unprecedented. And I'm sorry to be the first to use that word. Another interesting thing that I notice is, are there differences in behaviors between different consumer groups? Because I can only imagine that people who are more at risk versus those who are less at risk, urban versus rural, the elderly versus the very young cohorts, have reacted somewhat differently and somewhat similarly to this crisis. What are the differences, if any, that any of you have observed?
I think just to get me here, I think some of the differences really have been about the fact that while the basics have stayed the same and people are obviously staying at home, I think what's really common is the dynamics of, let's say, someone who's living as an individual. They're obviously facing different kinds of issues versus someone who's living in a family with the kid, versus someone who's living in a joint social strata where you are actually sharing with multiple people, etc. I think that those things have really added multiple layers to this. I mean, either from the way of functioning or from the way they're actually interacting with brands, or like even in general, like how they're really communicating, right, and surviving. I think that's really been the big difference here. How many people per house?
And I can only imagine that the definition of essential and non-essential also changes slightly depending on
100%.
any person's specific living situation. There's a
Yeah.
lot that is less essential to someone living alone
Yeah.
versus to someone with 6 members in their family, where each with a variety of needs.
Yeah.
And another thing, a great unifier has been everyone coming together and watching Ramayana at 9 p.m. at night. Good that the government started that, I suppose. But that brings us to a very interesting point. What kind of content do we see brands and businesses producing? What should they be producing? And what is the right kind of content strategy that we should be looking at going forward? And I'll throw this question to you, Parveen, because I think you're best placed amongst all of us to answer it. So,
Yeah.
what should be our content strategy going forward?
Yes, definitely. So, first of all, I totally agree with all of you. Like that, like this is the reset time, and this is the new truth now. We have to accept that and adapt as quick as possible. And based on that, like if I will give you few insights from Witty Feed and Stage, what we are doing as a content company. So we are two different product right now. One is OTT platform, and second is social content platform. So you have to adapt very quickly now, because the content consumption is changing right now. The internet usage has improved by 40% in just like 1 month, and the content consumption is increasing day by day. If you will see all the OTT platforms, like people are using crazily right now. The content is less and people are more to watch more content there now. Okay. And same time, uh, like this is the right time to build the right audience for the content industry, at least I can say that. In last 1 month of the time, our organic reach has improved by 200%. That is the real
Oh,
number
wow.
I'm sharing right now. Like literally 200%, because people are at home, they have powerful device called mobile, they have internet connection, and they really need right kind of information to reach out to these people. So one, you have to create right kind of content right now, because people are in fear, people need positive information, people need authentic information, and that is the most important thing we have to say if we are creating any content. like example, we have different shows on Witty feed, and but Corona is something take over everything right now. People don't really look for, like, if I will talk about new age media platforms, people are not looking for like entertainment में क्या हो रहा है या any other platform. They are looking right now कि कोरोना में क्या हो रहा है, and like what, how they can make sure कि उनके पास right information right समय पे पहुंच रही है. So this is something happening right now in content right now. uh, Marketing, we have increased our marketing budget of content because right now people are at home and they want to consume content, and the acquisition cost is also less if you compare to the past. So I think right now, for content industry, this is a Paytm moment, I can say that. And we all should we all should be very optimistic when we are creating our strategies right now. And yes, this is not something short time. This is going to be a long user behavior change, and we have to be very much futuristic if we are creating any content strategy here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I quite agree that this is, in fact, the Paytm moment for content and any content creators. So, going a little deeper, what kind of content do you see working best right now, or what kind of types of content maybe?
See,
Anything else that you can add over there?
yes. So one thing is very, very important. See, dumb entertainment is there a lot. People are consuming that, like, and they are getting entertained. But right now, because of the fear, the people need right useful entertainment, which is going to their social media feeds. And if we, as an content industry people, can create right content with the right information and able to the right audience right now, they will engage with your content, they will share your content, and they will be your loyal audience, not only today, for like forever. If today we will be winning their that one problem, that is fear.
Wow, that's really interesting. But how would one get? How would one be useful to consumers and help them get over their fear? Not
Like,
everyone can be an information-based brand. I can only imagine that.
So there are actually a couple
definitely.
of ways. So there are a couple of ways in which brands are actually doing this, right? And that's really the way to look at it. Every brand right now needs to look at itself as a utility. So
Yeah.
either, for instance, if you're a category that is part of essentials, then obviously your focus is to make sure how can you make sure people are getting the utility. If you're in logistics, and I've noticed this, that a lot of logistics based ones, I mean, even cab services, etc., are getting into the fact that we'll help delivery, we'll facilitate that for you. And in a generic sense, everybody's obviously talking about how, all the information that we need to give out. But the most interesting part, especially on content, has been how every product can actually be a content service. Look at something like Cure Fit, right? They're predominantly a gym and fitness service. They've pivoted entirely to becoming a fitness online channel, and they're really going 24/7 and engaging people to be able to be fit at home.
Sure.
And so in that sense, most brands can find ways connected to their brand to build engagement by building the right content. The only thing to keep in mind there is that there's a thin line between providing value as content and seeming like you're taking advantage of the situation. And consumers remember when you take advantage of a situation like this. So it's
Yes,
that thin line, right? You got to be very careful about that.
no, and I actually see a lot of brands trying very hard not to cross that thin line. Any examples of brands that have done this well, either stayed on the right side of the thin line or wittingly or unwittingly crossed it? Because I think this is a particularly sensitive area in this day and age. Khushboo, Neelima, any examples there?
I think the critical piece here is at this time empathy. We used to talk about brand empathy so many times, but this is the best time to actually talk brand empathy, wherein the content is actually getting curated from the empathy you can show at this time, and from the country point of view, the solidarity. So these are the two topics which will help you get to create content which are relevant. The second most important, there are most people spending more time on the social media, 20 to 25% up, and what Parveen was saying, even higher. they're all there on social media, but looking for things which are more relevant to engage them. They're looking for engagement content than actually just buying, because buying is only restricted to utility. So I think the brand who is doing very well job is all the health brands, like CureFit is one example, doing very well. MACD, in some places, I see them really doing, like Brazil, they have created such huge awareness on social distancing only through their campaigns. So that goes into the empathy zone of the brand.
Interesting.
I think what Nilima just said, the main part is apart from the essentials, which any which ways, if it is such a need and a desire that whichever brand masala that you get, you right now don't care about it. You just pick it up because it's available. If you are able to buy, be it the grocers or big basket, whoever pick your delivery, you are going to just order. You need it. So when it comes to essential, the brand tag or everything that we work behind to create brand just goes out of the shelf. But when you talk about engagement point of view, so all the clients or all the brands that we work with, there are so many discussion, and I think most of you will be able to relate to it, to make sure that the brands don't cross the line of empathy and need, and whatever you try to do, somewhere in from whichever lens you try to see, you feel that you are exploiting the situation. And that's where the agencies or the communication team comes into the picture to kind of put a check and need to keep a check on that. A lot of informations about what they are doing for the employees, what government policies that they don't know. Like one of our client works with a huge national network of plumbers, and they deposited some huge amount of funds to pay via Paytm to a large number of people, and they didn't publicize on social media, but they created a lot of content to say that they've turned their factory into shelter home. To so all the social media that you see right now for a something as mechanical as pipe and a pumping company kind of trying and saying that we are here, we are there. So they're trying to retain the relationship with distributors. They're trying to connect with your end influencers, which are more B2B driven. So that is the strategy that you have to kind of for each brand pick up and see that what content is your engaging user looking for and what it will help. Like the best example is Coca-Cola offering their social media as a channel. Like I don't have Coke to sell, I don't have anything to advertise, so I'm putting out my social handles for brands who need to communicate. So you really go out and create and show that you're social, but still try to make sure that that handle is Coca-Cola, so you're going to remember it's Coke. So in a way, there are IKEA is another one that I really feel has done a fab job in creating, staying at home and falling in love with the home with very good integration of the products, but very subtly done. Coke is doing it. The brands, bigger brands with more disposable, media opportunity and scale are doing it at their level. The smaller ones are relevantly whoever the target audience is creating content which is useful to them, and that's the strategy that will work.
There's
Sure.
there's one
That's
more example.
interesting.
Sorry, Neelima, you can go.
Please go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
But
There's one more example. Sorry, Neelima, I'm going to let you go ahead, then I'll come after you.
please now go ahead.
No, please.
Joys of a Zoom call. Okay, why don't we do it this way? Varun, why don't you continue and then we'll move to Neelima.
Super. No, what I was saying was that they've also been, I think that the mobile notification has become an interesting play of content as well. And how can you really make that larger? So for instance, most essential brands, if they're sold through an app, have almost a store locator notification in that place. ID Foods did something very interesting where ID Foods actually, because they're ready to mix to be made at home right now, will have a lot of demand. They've actually put one thing on their store locator, which is to say that notify me when supply comes back. Right. And that's an interesting add-on in terms of what you can do as a brand, saying, I know people will want to buy my stuff, but technically, how do I make sure that they don't have to keep coming and checking? I will notify you as soon as my supplies come back into the stores near you.
Sure.
That also is in an interesting way to kind of push, like how you say it, how you put it across is also really important in terms of content.
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting use of an off-despised marketing channel. And channels, I think, are another interesting topic, which is what I want to move to next. because it's all very well to say that brands should continue to produce content and what kinds of content, but equally important is what are the roles of different media channels during this crisis, whether it's traditional versus new media. I think it's a little obvious that new media are trumping traditional media for the moment at any rate. But what's the new role that we see digital media playing, and what's the new kind of relevance, and what parts of digital media are important? Again, I turn to you, Parveen, for this one. Let's start off with what your views are.
So I will start with a very normal Indian quote की आवश्यकता ही आविष्कार की जननी है. So I can say this is the time to innovate. Okay, and this is the time to again see in less what we can do more. Believe me, I am again saying based on the experience and reality, we have never thought of we will be able to do work from home and remote work as a content company and able to produce video content and able to deliver the quality which we always want. But our whole team is working from home. Everybody is at their home. कोई गांव में है, कोई शहर में है, कोई अकेला है, and believe me, everybody is doing amazing work and they are able to produce 3 times more content which we are able to produce at office, right? And now coming to the how responsibly we all know that right now digital is something very important because of the access, because of the mobile phone, internet, and being at home. So definitely right now as a marketer also, I can see there will be a big change shift will be going to happen in the budget spend versus traditional and digital. And brands will be definitely looking to promote more of their product on digital. And this is quite started happening, I can say, for us. Recently we did few campaigns in during this time and all are on digital only. If you heard about Upgrade as a company, like that educational content, so they have just launched one campaign called Aage Ki Soch, and we did like few videos for them, and everything was on digital and it was quite well also. So digital is going to definitely change the overall market spend, and I can see a huge potential coming to digital now.
Interesting.
Guys, presuming you will allow participant contribution also on this panel for a minute.
We're taking questions a little later. We had the last 15 minutes reserved for that. In the meantime, you can definitely drop your question on the chat window.
Add on to what has.
Neelima, circling back to you, and I'm sorry we had to move away from you at that point because, well, too many
No
voices.
issues at all. I think Varun covered it actually, so no issues on that. I think as marketeer, this is a time when we are also talking to so many brands who come for their consulting. It's time to shift the brand mix. Actually, there is no choice, and it's not by design, but you have really no choice. The medium which is really emerging, because you see when you see the media mix, 40% increase in TV, 20% increase in TV viewing, more than 35 to 40% increase in digital. Also within that, also there is a great divide in B2B and B2C segment. While the content was one of the big conversations for B2B, lead generation, demand generation, CRM, content creation, which can help you drive business, talk relevant content, and people are seeking more and more information right now. Although decisions are not being taken now, it's not cancelled, only postponed. So it's important. This is a time, what kind of message, what kind of information, what kind of relevant business information, leaflets, flyers, email marketing, WhatsApp marketing. Facebook has also introduced Facebook for Business. How you can utilize these forums to really reach relevant business content to your channel partners, to your customers is critical piece. Coming to consumers, there also I see two different kinds of Marketing right now, there's a lot of debate. Should you do marketing, not do marketing at the time? Because marketing was always considered as luxury, or the necessity was always during only the launch phase. So for startups, for businesses which are still small and medium scale businesses, it's time to really relook at the plans and go sharp shooted, focused, optimizing your website search engines. That's the very low hanging fruit which you can actually look at. Look at your website, rethink of how it is, do SEO around it, optimize the words, optimize the web page, website, and go heavily on digital marketing with content strategy. For brands which are bigger, it's the time to only keep reminding medium on. Keep people, do not allow consumers or customer to forget the brand. Because there is so much of clutter, so much of media consumption happening, it's important to ensure that people remember you. And the only way the big brands who are not into distribution right now, not into selling right now, is to show empathy and be available at the time wherein the crisis is on. So these are the 3-4 different ways in which media mix and strategy needs to be evolved and changed. Accordingly, the spends needs to be changed.
Very interesting. Actually, that's another point that we need to cover during this discussion. How does one plan their spends for the coming months? What are the guidelines that one can use, and what are the moments when brands should pause? When should they pivot? And what are some pointers that businesses could use?
See,
I think
reality is there is no revenue right now. That's the fact, right? So spends is to do with how much revenue you generate. So one has to be really right now not looking at short term. Again, is my advice to people. Don't be opportunistic right now that in 2 months everyone is on social media, let me get maximum content there and finish your funds and spends which you have gathered over the period of time, because this is here to stay. You'll have to really plan the money spent, get more focused towards what can get you faster revenue growth plans, and then get into the brand strategies onto it. So I think faster revenue growth spends has to be more on the long-term spends pattern than actually the first 3 months spend pattern.
Sure, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think the trap that many brands will fall into is to get a little scared by the short term and not think long term enough. But coming to you, Khushboo, you were about to say something there.
I think it depends on the spend, and a media plan depends on the company, brand, and category. Um, we do have some clients who are into essential category like spices and all, and they've started TV ads to kind of, get themselves out there, making sure
Yeah.
that they have distribution in place and all of it. Look at Balaji, look at Amul, look at Supreme. What these ads are coming, we never knew. Rajesh Masala, we never heard of it before. So, all of these brands are kind of, if you know that your category is going to sustain the market, and if you're able to get what Parveen was saying, that it's a cost of lead or a cost of reach is very low, then, and your balance sheet allows you to, kind of let you through and take a benefit of this time, then you should look at media mix that helps you kind of get a higher margin, focused attention. A lot of campaigns we've run for real estate, for a lot of different categories, we see cost per lead is very less, and people have more time to engage with a good content, and you know picking up calls and listening to you if the leads are coming in, giving up time later on. So it depends on the category. What are you selling? You're selling real estate, you're selling fashion. Like, I see them fancy high-end luxury bag ad on my timeline every time, and it's an 8,000 rupees bag, and I am not going to buy that
Yes,
right now
not the
because
time.
delivery is not the time. So you really need to know that what category you are, what a company, what scale, when your distribution is going to start, how much. So it's not just marketing and media. It is a very inclusive holistic strategy which needs to keep a lot of things in mind: psychology, economy, scale, state, region, rural, urban. The whole parameters are very varied and divided, and you have to consider all of them before even
Sure.
planning a media for a brand.
Interesting. And actually, this is an interesting question I'd like to pose to you, Parveen, again. What's the kind of data points that brands and businesses can keep in mind for formulating their budgeting spends in the next few months or even the next couple of years? So, in terms of data, what are we looking at? What are the metrics that brands should look at?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Neelima and Khushboo on the like managing, literally making any revenue as a business. So first of all, we have to be very careful on the runway key, like what is the runway we have, and then how we are managing that to like marketing, companies, employees, and other many expenses. So yes, and I can see ki marketing, whenever such kind of things happen, marketing budget cuts the first. So first figure out what is the like exact budget you want to spend on marketing, and then there are few pointers I can say. One, again, building like who is your target audience, and then how that target audience you can make to your loyal audience. Like that is the most important one data point you should discuss when you are creating that strategy. Then second thing is see one on two will solve there, but most important thing is engagement. So like how you can improve the overall engagement on your platforms by uh, interacting with your users. And third thing is on content also, right? See, when we have luxury, we create different kind, we experiment many things, but right now we have to be very much aware about that fact key. Right now every single spend is important, and we should know where we are spending that amount. So uh, uh, these things are very yeah.
Yeah. No, very interesting.
And yeah, please.
No. Actually, I was just actually thinking that the tracking of the spends, especially in a time like now, I think is even more critical than usual. But to these metrics, Varun, would you have anything else to add? What would you be tracking in terms of how effective marketing
So I think
strategies are
most
right
brands
now?
are pretty much trying to figure sustenance, right? And especially if we look at startups beyond the large ones, obviously we look at how do we make sure that costs are minimal, because a lot of them aren't like for instance, manufacturing not happening is not even the starting point, right? Supply of raw materials is not really reaching the factories. Forget even manufacturing happening for in many cases. So I think there till all of those get sorted, a lot of them will not really, and especially the larger ones will focus on just sustenance and making sure engagement is alive. I think for startups, it's a tricky situation. Is the fact that do you market right now, or do you kind of fully hold back and wait for this to go by? And in some cases, do you just hit pause or stop on operations till you go ahead? And again, like Bush was saying, it depends on which sector you're a part of. But I think what is interesting is that everyone, I think the first 1 week or 10 days kind of hit total stop and kind of looked at what they could do, and they're finding different ways of finding ways to engage with audiences, finding ways to connect. I think that's really the whole point. The fact is that okay, you need to be, this is a great time to take stock and say, okay, 1 second, I'm going to give myself that 1 week trying to figure out my plans, because obviously the entire year's plans have gone sideways. Maybe even next year's plans will be very different from what they are now. Can we relook at this? Because what I foresee happening the moment non-essentials also start going out into sale is the fact that performance marketing will be at its highest push, right? Everyone's going to focus on pushing sale. If you look at the example from what China did as soon as the Wuhan province opened up, was the fact that they were pushing for malls to be open, restaurants to be open, people to go out. People didn't necessarily venture out, but people start purchasing stuff. So e-com purchasing will be, if it was not high enough, it will be higher now, in that sense. And I think that's really going to be the big focus. I think it's an important time to hold back enough so you can push for enough performance marketing once non-essentials come out for delivery. But to also make sure that at some point you are still sporadically top of mind. it's a tricky balance to keep, but I think
Agreed
that's
to
really the way
this.
to go.
Also, it's important, and it's no harm, no fall, no cry if you can just sit tight and just wait for some time.
Absolutely.
There's an interesting example which I noticed today. There's this company called Sold Store. I mean, they're a startup, and so they've been kind of absent from my feed for a while. Suddenly popped up today. What they realized is that as soon as they said face masks could be made with cloth as well, they went out, started manufacturing face mask out of the socket, and where can we really contribute? And they're just putting out those imagery, right? They're not selling anything right now because obviously can't sell, but they're really putting it out saying, okay, when we had this available, and while this is something that startup has done, someone like a Diageo went and started manufacturing hand sanitizers, right? I mean, they traditionally would be creating alcobev at any point of time, but they decided, okay, one second, let's just do that. So I think at a large scale and at a smaller scale, this is the way to kind of adapt and move right now.
No, very interesting actually. That example of Sold Store is not one that would have occurred to me. And yes, they've been absent from my feed for a while as well. But now we're winding up the discussion and we're in the last legs. So I'll throw this open to all of you actually. If we were to sum it up, what are the few building blocks of brand strategy and business strategy in the short, medium, and long term? And let's think in terms of essential versus non-essential businesses, because there's a very critical difference there. Starting with Neelima, what do you think would be some critical?
I think there can be a little bit of different customization for essential and non-essential. Obviously, there is a lag in non-essential for some time. But what's common for both is this is a time tracked with the spends which you're making. So these are some of the 4 steps which I would ask people to do. Of course, for non-essential, since it's a longer time, and there is going to be more conservatism till the time people really go full hog, because liquidity is going to be equally important in the current economic situation. People don't know how it's going to unfold, how the businesses are going to take shape. So liquidity, people will be extremely cautious of spending. They will be cautious about their needs. So there again, scenario planning is the best way to move forward and accordingly take calculated risks.
Very interesting. Khushboo, what would you add to that? What do you think are the building blocks of business strategy
I
moving
think
forward?
Neelima covered it pretty much, but I will just add the one part over here is, at the risk of being sounding opportunistic, I request the brand owners, agencies to look at this situation as an opportunity. If you can hold yourself, sorry, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so look at it yourself in an opportunity. It's a forced necessity for everyone to rethink their business models, rethink their productivity, rethink the structure, rethink their strategies, rethink their communication. But also, while you do that, there are a lot of corrective measures that can be done in the way we have been doing things so far. And this time should be a good time to kind of reassess and check that. While you're working on your marketing strategy, there is a one very important aspect that's going to come is psychological impact. So the demography through which you were considering your TG, as in urban people, working, young, Gen Z, and all of that. Um, there's a new vertical, or sorry, there's a new horizontal that's going to come, where people who are deeply psychologically impacted by this, affected, who are thinking about economy, who are thinking about, green revolution, how healthcare, there's a whole shift, mind shift that's going to happen. And if you can position your products in, or if your services in keeping that new segment or new dynamics that's going to open up, then there is definitely a good differentiator you can bring in, that really helps. So I think using the time and this situation as a makeshift, like we started with our session, that it's a reset. So when the reset happens, you cannot just go back to what you were doing. You have to do things differently, and then only it makes sense. So that's how I would sum it up, that it's a time that we all need to understand where are we going to start after the reset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting point. The starting point after the reset, which feels a little far away right now, but is going to be upon us very, very soon. Over to you, Varun. What would you say? What would you add to what the other panelists have already talked about?
I think one of the core things we're going to take away from this is that we're also learning a lot about stuff that can actually work, which we haven't tried it. I mean, I'm putting aside the work from home and all that stuff. I think everyone's spoken about that a lot, not just here but everywhere. But I would say that there are opportunities that have come up through this. Is the fact that there are things. What are the things that people are going to really need post lockdown? I'm thinking of someone who's manufacturing medical equipment. I'm thinking that someone who's making those infrared thermometers. You're going to see a huge upsurge in someone wondering in every single public area wanting to buy those. So I think it's an opportunity for both both brands as well as their agencies to understand this is a great time to build products, to almost have business transformation, and to really say, okay, fine, post this, what are all the things that we need and how can we really build those out. And also the whole creation of advertising is really going to change, right? We've realized that we can actually do a lot of stuff remotely, do a lot of stuff through animation, like we've done over 5 to 6 to I'm now close to 10 shoots where our director has been in one place directing someone off a Zoom call, or who's sitting in their house where they're shooting themselves, and it has worked. I mean, the first day obviously the shoot went very long, but beyond that everyone's understood there's a process. So we're going to have a lot more remote usage of talent, which might actually make creation a lot cheaper, because that will be the need. The need will be to make things cheaper and more effective and more efficient. So I think that's really going to be the focus going ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, over to you, Parveen. What do you think are the most critical things that businesses and brands should be focused on as their next steps, as their building blocks for the coming months and years?
So I think we covered almost all the points, but as an entrepreneur, I want to say a few things here. Like, one, hold on for some time, go back, correct your mistakes, and then make a proper process and structure and plan future. Believe me, this is really a time where we can go back to the time and correct all the mistakes. We can get on call with our team, we can discuss things, and then based on that build a strategy, build a plan. Like example, जो चीज हम अगले 6 महीने या 1 साल में करने वाले थे उसको again give time and then make a proper futuristic approach and then work on that particular plan. And we have enough time now to talk to team formally, informally, and also good time to build a good relation with your employees, your clients, your brands. Like, empathy is something are we all need right now. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think a few key themes that I see emerging from this discussion is one, it's a time to pause and reflect, not just as individuals, but also as brands and businesses. This is the time that one can rethink products. This is the time that one can rethink your brand to suit future consumer needs. You can reconnect with the teams, you can reconnect with other stakeholders, and figure out a more thought through way forward. So I think that's an interesting takeaway. It may be a forced pause for many of us, but it is a pause that could prove important in how we choose to move forward. Another thing that I'm hearing from all the panelists, and correct me if I got this wrong, is that it's not a time to stop marketing. In fact, that's a bit of a trap to fall into. It's a time to pivot, sure, but it's not a time to pull the plug entirely, not for startups, not for bigger brands. Bigger brands can still, in fact, afford it to an extent. I know that Coke in Philippines actually put out an announcement saying they would go off air and donate all their marketing budgets to COVID responders. But it's not something that most brands and businesses can afford to do, not in entirety. So the time is to pivot to preferably more online and more cost-effective channels, whether that's social media, whether that's performance marketing, which I think is going to play a more and more critical role in the coming months, or whether it is optimizing things like your website or your search marketing, etc., etc. In terms of essentials versus non-essentials, I think essential businesses don't have much of a choice. They are, in fact, at the forefront at this point in time, and a bit of marketing to support their already businesses which are stretched is critical. Non-essentials, personally at least, I feel like it's okay for them to take a little bit of a pause till they find a more relevant way of stepping back into the consumer's lives. And the sold store example is one that really rings true over there. Don't be part of my feed unless you have something interesting or important to say, even if it's something as small as you having used your inventory to help with the COVID response. And who would have expected that from a small startup t-shirts business, which is known for being fun and quirky and not terribly serious at all. So those are the few critical things that I'm hearing. Actually, we're almost through with the discussion. One last question that I'd like to pose to the panelists, which we haven't really gotten around to. We all know that digital is the way forward, and we've known that for a while now as marketers, really. But in the light of all the changes that this crisis has wrought on our lives, what's the new role that we see of media like print, like out of home? Do we see the lines between ATL and BTL blurring? Do we see traditional media completely taking a backseat, or do we see them evolving in some way? How do we see this? How do we see this going forward? Khushboo, do you have something to say there?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't call print is dead as such, but print,
Amen.
yeah, print is definitely. I have been very vocal since before COVID with my clients that any which ways the paper ad is what I consider a 10-seconders, because the moment you flip the paper, I don't think it makes much sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so even if you non-normal regular day, if you have a bunch, you flip that page, it's all gone. And how much can you make a person remember a ad if you're not an agency or if you're not a brand owner? So there has been a question like how much and how much time do we have to go through that? But current times have definitely put a stop. But I think in opposed to that, those same channels have come up with their own digital platforms and digital advertising. So news is still a relevant category. Through that, there is still a lot of media and a lot of reach out that is happening. Just the medium has changed. Print as in format might not be that effective, but e-papers are there, and banner ads on Times to HT to Mint and all of that is still going on. Bhaskar, I have a client who spends a huge money with the online digital Bhaskar team, and it's very relevant. In shorts are very big segment in that space. So it is the news as a category for advertising to right target audience that you're looking for is very apt. It's just the medium that's going to change, and that is a shift that happens with age and a time, and we have to be very adaptive. Where one of Varun's podcast that I'd heard where this was discussed, and he can relate with it. You cannot call an agency a traditional or a digital agency. The lines have blurred long back. Your Pepsi is Lay's is a very big example of that. Would you call your Smile campaign a digital campaign or a packaging or a print campaign? It's an integrated campaign which starts and merges everywhere. You have to kind of see the whole campaign in a very holistic point of view. You can't look at it in isolation. Talking about outdoor and ATL, I think, again, I believe, or that was the main premise when I started my agency, was that there is now no differentiation. You cannot, as an agency, as a brand owner, look at mediums in isolation. You cannot say this is mainline versus this is digital, this is print versus outdoor. Um, Depends on, I work with a lot of regional brands which can't have TV budgets, doesn't have right digital channels, would go for theaters. But right now that don't make sense, because theaters are going to be shut till whatever good time, till Diwali. I don't see them people going there. So OTT is where your focus has shifted, because movies are getting released. So you have to, as an advertiser, move with the way audience and the trend is going. Wherever there is audience, you have to follow them, and whatever media be it, whether it's a digital, whether it's OTT, gaming, whether it's a content platform, you know what Praveen does, and fantastic content getting integrated with right brand message would be a good advertising spot. So it's about having a team who can think on the feet and not be constrained with the media. Media is the last of the worry. Media is the last of the worry that you should be thinking on. You should be looking at right strategy first. So that's how I would take it. Not
Yeah,
define.
if anything, I think this is the great equalizer, in the sense that it is really truly about the message right now, rather than the medium or the media, which we've been focused on as an industry for far too long. And it's a matter of evolution. It's, you don't have the theaters, you move to OTT. You don't have print in your traditional form, but you do have them on the screens. You may not have OOH for a while, but maybe you can pivot to using the billboard sites for something else. So with that, I think we've wrapped up most of the discussion. And while we haven't been able to respond to every single question, that is literally not a possibility in a discussion with a time limit, I'll hand over to you, Shivagi, for a few closing remarks.
We encourage all of you to sign in for that. Have a good afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. It was lovely meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.